Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am doing the mid-year book Freakout tag. There is no original video left up for this, so I have no link to share, but I will put the questions below if you want to do this tag. And you don't really have to be tagged. Everyone kind of does it just as annual tradition, I guess. So yeah, if you'd like to do it, please do so and let me know, and I would love to watch your video as well. So we're going to get right into it. Number one is the best book you've read so far this year. I've read some pretty great books this year that are going to be like all-time favorites, but this has to go to The Wonder by Emma Donaghue. I just absolutely fell in love with this book. I loved the story. I thought it was really compelling. I loved all of the characters. I loved the discussion of religion and religious fervor, morality and responsibility, and I love the conflict between the English nurse sent to the Irish countryside in 1859 and how that plays out. And it just was a great historical fiction, a great story in and of itself. It is about a girl whose community and whose family claims hasn't eaten anything in 4 months. 2 nurses are sent to basically take shifts and keep watch and to see what's actually going on, because they want to find out whether this is a genuine miracle or if there's some sort of fraud, if someone's been sneaking her food, if she's been stealing food. It's so compelling, and the writing was just so beautiful. Number 2 is the best sequel you've read so far this year. This was a bit harder because I haven't been reading many sequels, even though one of my goals for the year was to continue series that I've been reading and to finish series I've been reading, and I just haven't been doing very well at that. By the way, I'm going to be putting up, I think, a goals update in the next couple of weeks, so I'll talk more about how I'm feeling at that. But so what I have for this, I don't think really counts as a sequel, but it's definitely the favorite book in a series I've read this year, and that's Equal Rites by Terry Pratchett. So this is part of the Discworld series. This is number 3, but you can read them in any order. You can read this first. It doesn't have anything to do with the first 2 books. It's just set in the same world. And yeah, it's about a young girl who is a wizard, and they're trying to get her into the wizarding university, but girls aren't allowed to be wizards. Girls have to be witches, and just a lot of fun play on gender norms in a fantasy setting, and funny and lighthearted as always. Number 3 is new release you haven't read. Sorry, I read this weird. New release you haven't read yet from this year, but want to. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe the sentence is a little wonky. But this was hard for me because I don't follow new releases really at all. The only way I really hear about things is if other booktubers make an anticipated releases video, and there may be things that I put on my want to read list, but I don't look up new releases. I don't really follow them. So this was hard, but I'm going with Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. And this is a fantasy, and I've been really in the mood for fantasies this year. And this one, I can't remember what it's about. It came up as a recommended on some app or at my library or something. I don't know. I can't remember how I found out about it. But I remember I read the summary and it sounded like something that I would enjoy, so I ended up putting it on my want to read list. So I haven't read it yet, but that's the best I could do for new release because I don't really follow them. Number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of 2022. And I thought I wouldn't be able to answer this very well either, but then I remembered, no, there is something I am very much anticipating because I pre-ordered it. And that is Leena Norms's poetry collection that is coming out in July. There probably is going to be a lag because it'll have to be shipped to Canada for me. So I don't know when I'll get my copy, but her poetry collection is coming out in July, and It is called Bargain Bin Rom-Com, which love that title. I love Leena Norms's videos, and I like her poetry as well. She did some live shows a couple years ago, and she's done a couple other videos about poetry, and she's read like a couple of her poems, and her poetry style is something that I really like. So happy to support her, but also I think I will genuinely really like this collection. Number 5 is Biggest Disappointment this year. I'm giving this to a book I didn't hate, but it was a big disappointment, and that's The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. So this is a fantasy. It's like a dark fantasy, and it just kind of fell apart for me. I was liking it to a point. So the first like half, third, I don't know, first big part of the book, I really, really liked when the characters were like at this academy and you're getting to know the characters and you're getting to know the world better, and all of that stuff I thought was just fantastic. I loved the world. I was really into kind of like the school setting and how they were learning, how you were learning about the world, like through their classes and stuff. I just thought it was great. And then like halfway through the book, war breaks out and they go to war, and that stuff just didn't work for me at all. The character development for the protagonist just completely fell apart. She started just being a very inconsistent character, and that made me not able to like suspend my disbelief. Like I just couldn't believe her as a person anymore, and I didn't like some of the scenes which were essentially depicting the massacre at Nanking, and I just didn't appreciate that, I guess. So yeah, it just the second half, the wartime stuff, and there's so much like war strategy, and I didn't care. So kind of like the plot fell apart for me. The character definitely fell apart, and yeah, it was a real disappointment because there's so much hype around the Poppy War trilogy that I thought I was going to love it, and I just thought it was like kind of okay. So that's my biggest disappointment. Number 6 is the biggest surprise this year, and I'm going to give that to the final revival of Opal and Nev by Dani, Walton. This is like an oral history, like it's fiction, but it's an oral history of this like punk rock duo from the 70s who are coming back together, and it's like the history of how they shot to fame and this like race riot that broke out at a showcase they were playing at that helped them skyrocket to fame. And the reason this was a surprise is I read this for the BookTube Prize, and I never would have chosen it on my own. It was just like reading the blurb, it wasn't something that interested me. And aside from that, it also took me a while to get into the book. So for the first like 80 pages, I was enjoying it like well enough, but it wasn't, I just thought it was, it was fine and that I would end up liking it. But after about 80 or 90 pages, which I know is a lot, I just think there was like a few pacing issues at the beginning. But after that, the rest of the book, I was so engaged. I was completely sucked into this world. It was one of those things where like I wanted to like Google this band. I wanted to like watch the final revival. Like I wanted to watch them get the band back together and play this like show. And like I had to keep reminding myself like this band doesn't exist, Melissa. Like I just was completely engrossed. So I ended up absolutely loving the book, and definitely was a big surprise. Number 7 is favorite new author. So I could go with a lot of different authors because I read a lot of new to me authors. Like going back to The Wonder, this was my first Emma Donaghue. And obviously I loved that book. But I'm going to go with Claire Fuller because I read Unsettled Ground and I loved it. But I think the reason I'm going to go with Claire Fuller over other authors I also enjoyed is because I think specifically it was her writing, not so much like the story or anything else. I just think I love her writing. Hopefully, I'm definitely going to check out more Claire Fuller, and hopefully I love her other books as well. But there was just something about like the quiet way she wrote about characters and about like the landscape. Like there was a real sense of place, which I love. I just love great, like detailed settings that feel real. And yeah, so I just really loved Claire Fuller's writing. And so I'm going to give her the badge of favorite new author. Number 8 is newest fictional crush. And I don't have really an answer for this one. Not a great answer. There was no character that really stood out to me. But if I had to choose, I would choose Zaf from Take a Hint, Dani Brown. I don't know if this is just because it was a romance, so like you see this character in like a romantic situation, but he was just one of those very like soft, supportive, romantic leads. And he was an ex-rugby player, so I think maybe like that physique would be nice. So if I had to choose a crush, I would definitely go with Zaf from Take a Hint, Dani Brown. Number 9, newest favorite character. This has to go to Lib from The Wonder. I loved her character. I loved her character arc, and I was behind her all of the way through that book from beginning to end. I just loved her. I love what she stood for. I can't say enough good things about that book and about Lib. Number 10 is a book that made you cry. The Wonder did make me cry, but I am going to have to go with a book that made me absolutely sob, like streams of tears running down my face, worst headache I've had in a long time. Just absolutely sobbed reading this book. And that's Sweep, The Story of a Girl and Her Monster by Jonathan Auxier. This is a middle grade about chimney sweeps in the Victorian era. And I am a sucker for like bad things happening to kids. It just really, really gets to me. And it got to me. I mean, these children were put in the most horrific, dangerous situations cleaning chimneys. And I cried a lot. Number 11 is a book that made you happy this year. I'm going to go with Equal Rites again because I don't really read uplifting books, so it's hard to find one that makes me happy necessarily. Like, I'm happy if I read a book that I love, even if it's really like awful or dark or something like that. But if I'm going to go with like a book that made me happy in terms of lifting my spirits or making me feel light and joyful, I'm going to go with Equal Rites. But I mean, there are some like intense things that happen in the book, but it's like, it's a comedy and it's just, fun and quippy, and Terry Pratchett always makes me feel happy. 12 is the most beautiful book you bought or received so far this year. So I don't buy a lot of books, so I didn't have like a great one for this, but I did receive this for my birthday. And out of the books I've bought or received this year, this definitely is the most beautiful, even though I don't find it like particularly beautiful necessarily. But it's this graphic anthology called You Died, an anthology of the afterlife. I'm really into things about like funeral rituals and like death and the grief process and how people handle death, all of that kind of stuff. So this is edited by Andrea, Purcell, and Cal McDonald. And I do think that the cover artwork is really nice. I wouldn't call it particularly beautiful, but it's the most beautiful book that I received this year. And finally, 13 is What Do You Need to Read by the End of the Year? So at the beginning of the year, as part of my goals video, I made a very short list of 5 books I wanted to read in 2022. And it's halfway through the year and I read none of those 5 books. So I have to read those books by the end of the year. Like, I really, really want to. They were ones that I really wanted to prioritize this year and I just haven't. So they are Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which I don't have, and East of Eden by John Steinbeck, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, Beloved by Toni Morrison, and Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. So those are the 5 books that I really wanted to read this year and haven't read any of. So those are the ones that I really need to prioritize for the last half of the year. So that's the tag. If you've read any of these books, as always, please feel free to comment below. I would love to chat about any of them with you. And thanks so much for watching, and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.